We escaped from a haunted house, but something escaped with us. The children detested Whitewall House from the moment they first laid eyes upon it. The SUV trundled along a disused gravel driveway, passing the dilapidated farm of a long-gone man. It was more of a road than a driveway. We had already passed acres of absent land, abandoned for some reason that seemed inconsequential to me at the time. "It's too still," May muttered. That was my wife's first unfiltered thought upon seeing the neglected interior of the abandoned abode. Then again, all of May's thoughts were unfiltered. That was nothing new. Yet, this particular comment unsettled me. Her tone was uncharacteristically sombre, which only added to my frustration, given that our children were already whinging. In that moment, I needed May's usual sunny disposition. It was nowhere to be seen or heard. "This place is creepy, Dad," Eddie trembled. "I hate agreeing with the dingus, but he's right," Tilly seconded. "Let's hold our verdicts until we've spruced the place up," I said. "Things will look better when we've made the house our own. You'll see." I was wrong. After a few days of living in the house, May started to frequently wake me in the middle of the night, screeching about a long-armed lady that silently watched her from the corner of our bedroom. At the time, I dismissed my wife. She'd claimed to see ghosts at old stately homes before. I didn't believe in any of that. I'd never seen any evidence of a world beyond ours. But I would. May told me that the figure was stalking her during the day, only ever in the house. Still, it was always there. "We need to leave this place, Charles," May begged. "Look, just take a deep breath, sweetie. I think we should consider the therapy that Dr. Marlowe suggested," I said. "Think about it. We have 2 fully grown children and a newborn baby on our hands. This is a very stressful time for us, and we've moved house. You know, this isn't the first time you've claimed to see a ghost, is it? Don't you think the sleepless nights could be to blame? After all, postnatal depression could—" "I'm not depressed!" May cried. "Why won't you just believe me? Stop being a pig-headed cynic for once in your life. I know what I keep seeing." "I always believe you, darling, but your mind is playing tricks on you," I said softly. "You know I don't believe in spirits or haunted houses." On that final night in our unsettling home, those words rang in my head. I saw something that I did not, and still do not, know how to explain. Something that made me understand the awful reality of our situation. "Get the children," May whimpered. The sudden request sharply stirred me from my sleep, and I rubbed my weary eyes to find my wife in an upright position. For a moment, in my peripheral vision, I saw a black shape flutter past the bedroom window. However, when my eyes adjusted to the light, the horror seemed to be no more than a curtain billowing in the breeze. "Oh, right. Sorry, I left the window open. Are you okay, sweetie?" I asked. "No, Charles," May whispered, pointing at her least favourite corner of the room. "She's come to take me. Look." Horrifyingly, when I followed my wife's finger, my eyes met the ethereal form once more. The black shape had been no trick of unrested eyes or poor lighting. A long-necked lady, hid in the dimly lit corner of our room. A figure whose existence I had accepted far too late. The moonlight was sufficient to illuminate her slender, crooked stature and stringy waist-length hair. I leapt out of bed and flicked the light switch. It didn't work, and the long-necked demon started to lurch towards the bed. "Get up!" I shouted at my wife. May clumsily slid across the mattress, and I hoisted her up, practically hurling her onto the landing in a desperate bid to put distance between the creature and my wife. The two of us burst into the kids' shared room, and I scooped baby Jen out of the cot whilst Eddie and Tilly started to wake. What's happening?" Tilly sleepily asked. "We're leaving," May ordered. "Go straight to the car, now." Eddie groaned. But... "Do as your mother says," I barked. Eddie and Tilly are good kids. On that night, they must have been battered for 6, but the two children saw that same dazed, petrified look in the eyes of their parents. They didn't question us. We moved in a tight, unified pack, like a ball of rubber bands, threatening to snap under the tension of the cursed house. None of the light switches responded to my elbow nudges, and I was carrying Jen, so I asked Eddie to illuminate the way with my phone. "Where's Mum?" Tilly suddenly questioned. I turned my head. May had been glued to my side, but at some point along the shuffle towards the stairs, my wife vanished without a sound. "Wait in the car," I panted, passing the baby to my son. "Eddie, look after both of your sisters, okay? Keys are in my coat pocket." "Where are you going?" Eddie asked. I'm gonna find your mother," I replied. "Wait in the car." As the children scurried downstairs, I heard a door creaking at the end of the hallway. Creeping along the near lightless landing, I squinted at the crack between the ajar door and the frame. My eyes froze as they locked onto the long-necked lady. The creature smiled at me. A toothy, almost human smile of bent wooden pegs, which held together the fabric of what the creature deemed to be a smile. Its head hung to one side, unbalanced on its uneven neck. "Charles! Charles!" May cried. I twisted to see my wife standing behind me on the landing, her face strewn with tears. And when I turned to face the ajar door at the other end of the hallway, the long-necked entity had disappeared. I didn't ask questions. I simply seized May's hand, half-dragged her downstairs, and followed our children to the car. As I jammed the key into the ignition and the engine roared to life, I expected to see our spectral stalker standing in the open doorway of our lifeless home. She was not there. The house sat soundlessly in the darkness as I raced down the driveway, putting Whitewall House in the rearview mirror. We settled at a hotel that felt suitably distant from the place. I told myself that the terror had ended, but something startled me awake in the early hours of the morning. May was breathing heavily on my neck. Slow, heavy, guttural breathing. I rolled over, facing my wife's side of the bed. She wasn't snoring. May was lying there, wide awake, eyeing me. And she wore a face without emotion. A cold, unfeeling face. Worst of all, when I screamed, it was little more than a meek, muffled, pitiful moan. I realised that skin was covering my mouth. As I clutched fearfully at my face, May inhaled and exhaled with immense weight. Then she placed her index finger on my mouthless face. Shh. The thing shushed me. And then I unwillingly drifted back to sleep. When I woke several hours later, my lips had returned and my children were sleeping safely in their beds. It was a dream, it was just a dream, I thought. I looked at May. Her eyes were closed, but her face barely looked alive. It was just as emotionless as the night before. I fought hard, but I eventually accepted the truth. The thing next to me was not my wife. I took my children far from that place, not knowing what I'd left in the hotel room. I only knew that I had to return to Whitewall House. After leaving my 3 children with my sister and not giving her an explanation, I drove to our abandoned home. The rickety structure looked different that afternoon. 12 hours had passed, but the property appeared ruinous. It had almost fallen apart overnight. My knees knocked together as I inched towards the open front door. It was exactly as we'd left it. Silence greeted me in the lobby, but that wasn't a source of comfort. I thought of May's comment when we'd first arrived 2 months earlier. It's too still. May? May? I called. I padded up the creaking stairs, grateful for the sunlight that poured through the windows, though it did very little to rid the house of its immensely terrifying power. I finally saw what my wife and children had seen for weeks. The true malice concealed in those walls. And then I heard crying from the room at the end of the upstairs landing, our bedroom. My feet defied all commands. Those disobedient appendages carried me towards the haunting noise. A few moments later, I was pushing the door open. I found something that paralysed my shaking body. May, I whispered. My weary wife, my real wife, was sitting on the edge of our bed, face drenched in tears. And she looked up at me. You came back. You came back for me, she said, sniffling. May jumped to her feet, and we embraced for a few eternal seconds, nesting our faces into one another as we bawled. I felt a deep, unyielding guilt for leaving my true partner in such a wretched place. I'm sorry, I sobbed. It tricked me, that thing. I thought they were our children, May anxiously interjected. They're with Rachel, don't worry, they're safe. They're not near her, whatever that thing might be. Come on, let's get out of here, I said, wrapping an arm around her. My wife gently squeezed my hand and shook her head, meeting my eyes with hers. She beamed, but her ever-vibrant demeanour did not dull the lingering pain in her eyes. Her sorrow filled me with a dreadful emptiness. No, I can't, she replied. The door to the guest room, at the far end of the landing, swung open of its own accord. My wife did not move an inch. She shivered at the very sight of the open doorway, the one which had framed the haunting image of the long-necked lady the night before. I sensed that May lacked the courage to go first, so I motioned for her to stay in our bedroom as I walked across the landing. I thought fearfully of the thing with the curved, slender neck and lopsided head. I braced for whatever fate the entity would deal as I opened the door. However, I didn't find the abominable demon in the guest room. I found something worse. I'm sorry, Charles, May whimpered as she stood behind me. She wasn't standing behind me, of course. My wife was lying on the carpet of the room, snapped and splintered into a twisted shape with protruding bones. May died hours before I arrived there. Alone. No! I croaked, falling to my knees in tears. I didn't know whether you'd believe me, her spirit sobbed. Charles, I need you to. Did it happen whilst I was helping the children downstairs? You know, I saw her in the doorway. I should have done something, I murmured. The spectral form of my wife placed her hands on my shoulders, consoling me as I mourned her. There is no easy way to describe the disturbing nature of having a conversation with someone whose corpse lies at your feet. Charles, May said gently, I need you to listen to me. You have to protect our family, okay? Where did you last see the lady? At the hotel, I replied. I told you, the kids are safe. They're miles away. Charles, she's not at the hotel, May said. What? I asked. She's not at the hotel, May repeated. That thing was only able to leave this place by latching onto someone. You, I said. My wife shook her head. No, sweetheart. You. Wherever you go, it goes. There was the sudden sound of a door slamming, and the light outside the windows dimmed, as if a singular cloud had floated above our house, stealing it from the world. She's here, May whispered, gripping my arm. That thing took my necklace. The one you gave me. That's how she assumed my form. If you take it back from her, that might trap her here. A moan sounded from the lobby. May gripped me tightly. Listen to me, sweetheart. I can't leave with you. I also can't stay. My time here is fleeting. She's shutting me out. I turned to face my wife, but her spectral form had already extinguished. I was kneeling on the floor, beside May's decaying corpse. I rose to my feet and listened to footsteps ascending the staircase. Then I saw the thing that was wearing a poor imitation of my wife's body. It smiled at me, finally displaying emotion as it hissed in a voice almost like that of May. What have you found, sweetheart? The necklace, sporting a pair of initials, M and C, swung tantalizingly on my wife's soft skin. I had to remind myself that it wasn't her. It was a demon's deceit. And I also knew that it wouldn't take long for the lady, as May called her, to infer my intentions. Without hesitation, I shot towards the creature and grasped the necklace in my hand, curling my fingers around the small, delicate shape. The smile on the lady's face faded, and she slowly shook her head at me.
I wouldn't do that,
she hissed. In spite of her warning, the thing didn't raise a hand. It didn't try to stop me. I wrenched the necklace from the frightful demon, and then I propelled the creature onto the floor with 2 forceful hands before rushing down the stairs towards the entryway. Before I managed to exit the house, the front door slammed shut, enclosing me in the darkened space. And I spun around to find that my wife's doppelganger was gone. All that remained was the frightful form of the lady. Long-necked, rotten, and beyond our world. Its unsupported head bounced against its shoulder. I stared at the Reaper's unholy face as its janky body clomped downstairs. It reached the lobby, and I pressed my back against the front door, fumbling with a lock that didn't budge. Run! A voice screamed. My wife's ghostly hand rose from the floorboards, seizing the lady's skeletal ankle and rooting it to the ground. The demon screeched, swiping a hand towards me as I slithered into the lounge. The being continued to moan as I picked up a dining chair and hurled it at the living room window. The glass pane shattered, and I hauled my body through the empty frame before landing on the driveway. I didn't look back. I slipped into the SUV and fled for the last time. I will never return to Whitewall House. I pray that my wife has found the next plane. As for the lady, I suspect she still lives in that abandoned home, waiting for the next doomed soul to free her.